Sanje Chendo Medivo Ye Dokana Achevo Sho Yedang Gurora. No, yeah. I Shunchimi Umang was one of the teaching song. Shunchimo said, Lubin Papa Lani, Lubin Sanje and Lendenta, Lendenchetan, Dawa Trabata, she was solo so, Umang was Chimbo Namjija, Lubin and Drawa, Saman Zebe, Yapsan Nigre, Uma was Shanam Jukun, that took Sadi, in Zang, Marawan Tinila, Papa Ludrutan. Ani Lubin Papa Lanila, Shunchimi Umawache. That Shan Linden Jeta Sanje Dan Dawa Trabala, Ani Cho Yonsu to be Umawache. Linden Sanje Dan Dawa Traba, Linden Jede Kasore Umaranjubak Sonja Soche, Dawa Trabadi Tanjuak Sing the Soche, Shiva Sodi.
So as we were saying at the end of last session, as the text says here that Master Aryadeva is held to be equally authoritative as the Master Nagarjuna himself by, this is the Masters Buddhapalita, Bhaviveka, Chandrakirti, Shantarakshita, all of these masters, these great Madhyamika masters hold that Master Aryadeva is of the same kind of authority as Master Nagarjuna. Therefore, earlier Tibetan scholars of the earlier generations designated the father and son, Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, as the model system, as presenting the model system or the sort of fundamental model system of Madhyamaka. And then the other Madhyamika masters from, for example, Bhaviveka established the tradition of interpreting Madhyamika according to the Swatantrika or autonomous type of interpretation, whereas Master Chandrakirti established or held up the interpretation of Madhyamika according to the Prasangika or consequentialist type of interpretation. And then Master Shantarakshita established the system of Madhyamika in which it has similarities with the Yogacara system of mind-only doctrine. And so each of these subsequent Madhyamikas had their own style of interpretation, and therefore the earlier Tibetan masters designated them as the Madhyamikas who hold partisan positions, different types of positions. They gave them that designation.
Oh yeah, Ali lesson bunala. Kondre le tani sum bitan. Nanjo jaba wata chita trawade doyu ten member. Umi tendu trewi lamso dini lenden chichi chewa shibduni umanawa le shadow se. O tigi lenden chi. Ane ranji bishinde sochi simbati. Gondrele, Dodo Gondrela, Tenisum, Shawan Yondru, Gundasum Sumbate, and a dotty ten member. Nanjaba Wataka, Santa Michita Trawa, the doy ten member. Ani Uma Lamso, Umi Tundu Chevi, Lamso Dini, Lenden Chichi Chewa, shipped in Umanawa le shadow, said Tigi, Lenden, Nanjuji, Kaze, Umaranji Bishing the Sochi in Batisuga.
So, and this is in particular when we speak of Master Bhaviveka, he is particularly renowned. Je Rinpoche, Je Tsongkhapa himself praised the Master Bhaviveka as establishing the system, establishing the tradition of the Swatantrika interpretation of Madhyamika. And he's especially renowned for having demonstrated in his work, the lamp for Madhyamika, that the intention of the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, the sutra which explicates the intention of the Buddha, to translate that sutra's name. Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra teaches the three natures of things being sort of having an imaginary nature, a dependent nature, and a perfectly established or perfected nature. Those three natures, the mind-only school of the Yogacharas interprets that one way, and the Master Bhaviveka argued that their way of explaining the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra is not correct, rather explaining it in accordance with the Madhyamika system, and therefore for that in particular he's recognized for having sort of opened up and explained the middle way via the style of interpretation of the Swatantrika school.
Oh yeah, that is sabi sanje jangdang andawa chabani la, ani basically ani sanje jang lendan kaso tanju bisinde soche shenge, dawa chaba shenge tende kawa soche shezu memda yawade, ani thoma kaso re tanju damji ruja jaba, rangshinji mibi so thoma tiongende, ani sanje jangche. Tijela so dena yang tanju tabadang aranju ki tenzi media bagi ane o ranju kajin tanju do jubate ane dawa chaba tanju ranju media bane dawi shu jenran jang jaba memba ne sawa mishung chen sung gare ane dawa chaba de tanju singde so jele jwa.
So then the master Buddhapalita, he explained the thought of Nagarjuna very clearly, and he presented a view which is in common, the fundamental view that's held by the Prasangika school of Madhyamika. But he received some criticism by Master Bhaviveka, and subsequently it came down to the Master Chandrakirti to demonstrate clearly that Buddhapalita's interpretation of Nagarjuna was correct, valid, whereas the criticisms leveled by Master Bhaviveka were invalid, incorrect. And so some people hold that actually Buddhapalita could be said to be a sort of an opener of the way of the Prasangika, pathfinder of the Prasangika view. But generally it's held that because it was the Master Chandrakirti that sort of clearly and thoroughly demonstrated the view that he's usually designated as the pathfinder, reopener of the way of the Prasangika interpretation of Madhyamika.
Oh yeah, that is there. Ani shiwa cho de ani ranjuba tela, todi jibe uma ranjuba da, nanju jibe uma ranjuba ni yubi ni. Da ranjuba ke jirin todi jibe uma ranjuba so che dang, ranjubi xingde so che de linden je ba xia ne. Da nanju jibe uma ranjuba ke ani so che wa de shiwa cho. Ra tenda wil ani ka shung re dang shung me jang tanya do chiro me be chu de lo ben shiwa de so che wa da lo ben shi de xie ba da ka se le so chane le shen yin bo le so ba na che wa tenda wil shung re tanya de chiro me be chu de mi tum de so che wa ne lo ben shiwa de so che ba da so che wa lo ben shi de xie ba da le so chane le shen yin bo le so ba na shen chane ani shiwa zo nanju jibe mara jibe sunje so je shoku are. Yeah.
So then subsequently then we have the Master Shantarakshita, And he's renowned for having clearly explained the Madhyamika system from the perspective of the system which holds that conventionally there are no external objects. And so that system of interpretation of Madhyamika is called the Yogacara Madhyamika, or Yogacara Swatantrika Madhyamika, because it has certain characteristics in common with the system as the master Bhaviveka explained it. Bhaviveka negated the position that there's no external objects, but Master Shantarakshita upheld the position that there are no external objects, and thus is generally held to, or an early Tibetan scholar of the Master Yeshide said that we call Shantarakshita the founder of the Yogacara Madhyamika system, because he's the first one to clearly state that his position that there are no external objects, although there are other masters even before him that sort of indicated that view. He's the first one to sort of lay it out clearly and explain it all systematically. So that understanding of how Yogacara Madhyamika arose, and Shantarakshita's position as the sort of the opener of the way of that line of interpretation, J. Rinpoche says that's a good way of explaining it in the Essence of Good Explanations text.
Oh yeah, that 되게 초진부 우마와 시 탄야 체도 체. 당하라와 남지 민도 되라 민도조 되라. 아니 담보 탄야 조주지 관에 민다와 다와 되라. 아라비 신의 카지나레 탄야 조주지 관에 민다와니 우마와 이데스. 난디 지거와레. 이러와 탄야 조주지 관에 민다위 우마와 되라 니 가르레서나 탄야도 치된 여반 되봐. 그러와 주로지 된 샤지 생겐 되라 아니 도대 줘봐와스 도대 줘봐와스 도대 와기 치된 샤지 시고 아래 그러와 치된 개념바 아라리 된루 된게라 도대 와시고 아라 타나베 좀 되라 얘는 치된 샤지 샤와 인상 탄에 조주주권에 민대 우마와 니데 탄야지 치로 여반 되바기 도대 줘봐와다 탄야도 치된 매반 되어봐 난저 줘봐 우마와 시리가나 탄야지 조주 치된 조주 도저와다 고뒤네 마와텔라 도저집을 우마와 난지 우마와체 난 난저 줘봐게 우마와 시저 yap세당 시저 yap세다 박생 yap세 둔족이 아니다 치된 샤시고 말이 인사 샘자바고 치된 거 메대바 인자 다 섬탄에 기남샤 치대 매바 탄에도 치료 매반 되어봐 나저 제법이 우마 시가나 나저 제법과 시만이 샘자바게 메체니 아 샘자비 춥다던 고뛰냐 마위 우마와 되라 나저 제법 우마 시가나다 너 제법 우마란 주바다는 주마란 주바 이체.
So then there's some other earlier Tibetan virtuous friends, masters, who have different designations for the different types of Madhyamika, for the earlier Indian Madhyamika masters. And they do this kind of naming or designating of the different sub-schools of Madhyamika in two different ways. One is from the point of view of how they establish that which is conventional, and the way they designate the different sub-schools of Madhyamika according to their positions with respect to conventional existence of things is generally correct and is acceptable. So that goes as follows, that according to these earlier Tibetan masters, they would say that in terms of how the Madhyamikas are the earlier Indian Madhyamikas are designated from the point of view of how they posit the conventional, then there's two types of Madhyamika. That is, those who hold that conventionally external objects exist, those kinds of Madhyamikas are given the name of the Sautrantika Madhyamika. Sautrantika is the so-called lower school, which holds that external objects exist. Objects external to the mind actually exist. So these Madhyamikas, such as Master Bhaviveka and so forth, are given the name Sautrantika Madhyamika because of their sort of accepting conventionally that external objects exist, similar to the way in which the Sautrantika school, the so-called lower Buddhist school of the Sautrantikas, assert the existence of external objects. But then, if some Madhyamika masters, such as we mentioned, Shantarakshita, and then there, as well as his disciple Kamalashila, and there's also other masters such as great master Haribhadra and Vimuktasena and so forth. These earlier Indian masters said that conventionally external objects do not exist, objects which are independent of mind or external to the mind. So the way they, although they are Madhyamikas, they are similar to the Yogacara school in saying that things are mind only, or they assert the mind only position, which denies the existence of external objects. So they're given, so they say that conventionally there are no external objects, and from that position, from the point of view of their holding that position, they're given the name, or were given the name by these earlier Tibetan masters of being Yogacara Madhyamika.
Oh yeah, that thing, Tanya Jotu Jukona Chate. That Tendam Desu Jukona Mentawa Tela, Tendam Desu Jukona Mentawa Nides, Nugula Sovi Churchan Tang. They make it now Sobat, you down. Nugula Sovi Churchan, they make it now Sobat, Tendam Deba Deba, Dumari Jubatan. Now la Joa number JB, Joa, the new number JB, you want to Tendam Deba Debi, Radu Minewa, Mawa War. Oh, that Kajik Tenigi, Ani Namade, Dumari Jubade, Lobeshi Sodan. Kamashila Sova, Yula. Jumata Bota Radu Delas. Jumata Bota Radu Media returning, and it or Jagawa Kajikan Dodo. Adi, Jigomare, the Jelly Tongue. Yeah.
So then, so that's what we've covered so far is how the different, some of the earlier Tibetan scholars differentiated the various sub-schools of Madhyamika according to the positions held by different Indian masters, whether they accepted or denied the existence of external objects. Then some of these earlier Tibetan masters also presented different subdivisions or designations of the sub-schools of Indian Madhyamika thought, according to the way in which they hold the ultimate to exist, ultimate reality. So they give names according to what these early, according to how they understand the earlier Indian masters to have held the ultimate to exist. And so for example, the way this works is that if you take a base like a sprout and so forth as a sort of base for the property of being unreal, then those who hold that ultimate reality is the combination of the appearance of the base, which is, for example, a sprout and so forth, and as well as its property of being unreal, the sort of the appearance of the unreality of the sprout, as well as the sprout itself. Those two in combination, that type of position is called establishing things as like a magical illusion with reason. So this type of Madhyamika, according to these earlier Tibetan masters, is given that name. Those Madhyamikas who establish things as being like an illusion through reasoning. And then there's another subtype of Madhyamika, Indian Madhyamika masters, which are, according to this some of these earlier Tibetan positions, who hold that ultimate reality is a positive determination of a thing in which nangwala nampache bi yongche
nangwala zhuwa nampache
nangwala zhuwa nampache
zhuwa denduk zhuwa nampache
so these people say that some Madhyamikas, some of the Indian Madhyamika masters, held that ultimate reality is sort of a positively delineated thing, which is the elimination of conceptual elaborations of things as being real with respect to appearances. So they hold that as sort of the way in which these earlier Indian masters understood ultimate reality. And that type of position, they gave the name the Madhyamikas who propound non-localization or a non-localization of things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 가서다. 대니 대가마 시와 초당 아니 까마라 지라인 받더라. 주마다오다라도 미나베 자가 같이 돼도 어다 되라. 근데 가서 뭐뭐 어쩌 기나 세주와 민 전담대주지 전대 민대데 뭔바 인수데 전담대주지 관한 이수 샤바데 담뭐바 와자 기비 남샤고시 아니 로자와 쳔베송어 담미데바디 월라텐거리.
So this way of giving those names, the way of designating Madhyamikas as it's been explained up to now, from the point of view of how they accept conventional existence or non-existence of external objects, that's acceptable, that's fine. But this way of differentiating Indian Madhyamika masters according to these ways of understanding ultimate reality is incorrect, is actually a kind of confusion which will be explained later on. But here it's just saying that it's a big confusion. So the former of those two are here referring to again, Tenigi Ngamani.
Tenigi Ngamani is Jumaru Rubada. Metanway Kona Yugula Sova, Jumaru Rubada, now la Treva Pichepaki, you want to tend to Baratu Minewa Sekana. Tenigi Ngamate, Mama Carrier, Jumaru Rubati.
So the former of those two explanations of ultimate reality, which is which is given the name, the Madhyamikas who establish things as rationally establish things as being like magical illusions. This designation is applied to the master Shantarakshita and his disciple Kamalashila, etc. And then as far as the other positions where it says that which is things being like an illusion, the terms Madhyamikas who hold that things are like a magical illusion, and also the terminology of non-localization, not being fixated or localized. Some Indians also hold that kind of employ that kind of terminology and hold that sort of interpretation with respect to the earlier Indian masters.
Oh yeah, that is yeah. Umitanju Jababodan, Dodi Jabada, Uman Nanju Jababi, so Chungrim, Yishidi Shabataba, Statajunga, Top the Shua Imba. Oh, Lobe Yishidi Dare. Papa Yase, Umitanju Jabales. That Papa Yase, oh, Ludan, Papa Lai, Umitanju Jabala, and it's Chidi Yemeki to Sawama Jabache. That here was the Lobe Lenen Chegi, Navritamji Lucy Chunde. Tanya to Chiro Yibilu, number Shago, Tajiki Wanashi. Navritamji Lucy Chuma, the Gondela Nandu Jabawata, omitted, Kase, 10 member, said the Nandu Jabba was sending some between 10 member, said the Lendenji, number Dodo wanted to 10 member. Shawanda Yondu, Ani Demba Trubada, Akunda Demba Mebada. Ani Chidin Madruba. Okay, Ani Dodo wanted to 10 member. Oh, Namritam Jilu, the Sun Chunde, Ani Tanya do, Ani Chiro Yebek Lushayade, or Dodo Jabakis, Umaraji Sochi at the chat.
So to finish that last passage up first, that this making this kind of differentiation of Madhyamikas according to the way they hold the ultimate is a strange kind of confusion, which is sort of a joke. That was said by the great translator, one of the former great masters of Tibet, called the Great Translator. He rejected that as well. Now, with respect to the first part of this, and showing how it's this sort of general way in which you can subdivide many of the subschools of Indian Madhyamika into the Sautrantika Madhyamika and the Yogacara Madhyamika, the way in which those arose. As the master Yeshe Day, former Tibetan master Yeshe Day, explained it, that's generally correct. The text says here that the master Yeshe Day says that after the Arya Nagarjuna and Aryadeva had composed their Madhyamika treatises, in those treatises, they didn't really clarify the status of external objects, whether or not they existed or did not exist. It wasn't clearly laid out whether or not external objects actually exist. And then subsequent to that, after the time of Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, then Master Bhaviveka, as I mentioned earlier, he explained how the Yogacara interpretation of the Sandhina Sutra is incorrect insofar as the way in which they present the three natures of things, the dependent, imaginary, and perfect nature of things. Their explanation of that is incorrect. And likewise, that he said that whereas Yogacara says that there are no external objects, Master Bhaviveka said that actually demonstrated that conventionally there are external objects, and so he established that tradition of Madhyamika interpretation.
Oh yeah, that tene loben shizu nanjo jebi shungla tene. Nanjo jeba ke shungla tene, nanjo jeba ke tanya de chiro ka yo yinzang, ane tanya de chide mebata. Chiro mena yang, nanjo jeba we, ane semner tenda bara chua de go are tema imba, tenda ba sem rashi meba. O tenda ba sem rashi meba tembi, 우미 추면자와 시대배 우마와 니 중심 우마와 남바 니 중심 당 아마 치된 대수 도대와다 고된바나 도대집이 우마와당 치마 신조게 치된 샤지 메시바 안에 선사바다 고된바나 난조집이 우마와시에 따서
So then, as mentioned earlier, that subsequent to Bhaviveka and his positing that conventionally external objects exist, the master Shantarakshita, depending upon the system of the Yogacharas, said that, or he presented the position that conventionally there are no external objects, whereas ultimately the mind is without any kind of intrinsic existence. So he taught that kind of interpretation of Madhyamika, which is a different system of Madhyamika. And by doing that, we would say, or in doing that, he gave rise to a new or different interpretation of Madhyamika. And in that way, the two types of Madhyamika arose. The former of these, because its position with respect to external objects accords with the view of the Sautrantika school that there are actual external objects, is called the Sautrantika Madhyamika, whereas the latter of these two is in common with the Yogacara school, is called Yogacara Madhyamika, is designated by those names.
Oh yeah. 시에차반에 땡주 전부 싸와 제비 조르면 대다도 어노 세타마 아니 렌렌치 란주 소치 도리집이 엄마 란주 받아 란주 소치 대제라 아니 난주 집이 엄마 란주 받 시와치기 아니 난주 집이 엄마 란주 소치디 조르면 대다래 송거 말이야.
So then, by this explanation of the general way in which the two major sub-schools of Madhyamika arose, that, as the Master Yeshide has explained, is clear that's the case. That it's obvious, in effect, from the great treatises themselves that that's the way in which those two sub-schools of Madhyamika arose.
Oh yeah, that teacher, Loven Dajala, Tanya Teta Miruma, or that Nanjo Jabba, what Dimba, Logi Jabba, what Dimba, Shake, Tanya Teta Mirumani. Yan Dawat, Loven Dawat Trabani, Tanya to Chide Yoba Shaji Sheba, Chide Shaji Sheba, Lenden Chedang, Tsumba Rede, Chide Shaji Meshi, Shezu Mindrava. 로와 토변 자지 제주 민자와 간데스레 사나 렌덴이기 아니 취된 자지 셰와데 아니 다 가소레 도대 와다 뭐 튼바 로와 간데스거레 세가나 잠시 두된 참매 주 참매 사발라 되나 라바 되기 아니 메겐 체네 아니 순지 미시께와 도시되고 아래 되게 참에 로아 오다 다 돈도 대주 된데 요아래도 가서래 도주 요아래도 지단잖아 다 연장 너대 위치된 시주당 너대 제부 엄마랑 집에 취된 시주니 어디 파지 총받자지 로아 취된 샤지 셰도 취된 대바 총장 취된 대바 총마주를 제바요 와체 나는 다와 잡아기 취된 샤지 셰와세데 아니 텐데 너대와 나신 잠시 두된 사비 왕그 참에 메세바 민게 파다 답 잠지 아니 싫어지 텐라 되네 순지 미시게바 너바 연장 다와 잡아라 너대 제바다 고티나 마와 세게다데 가수데 메순 거래들와 좀더 현당 고 믿음배 너대 제바와 셴 미run라 와 좀더 셴 너대 와도 고 믿음배 안에 너대 제바와 셴 미run라
So, however, making this kind of distinction, saying that the Master Bhaviveka, being a Sautrantika Madhyamika, that is generally applicable because just as the Sautrantikas hold that external objects are sort of composites of subtler rudimentary parts, and that these gross objects and the basis for the composition of gross external objects are real and established. This kind of part of the Sautrantika school's philosophical system is basically in accord, or the Master Bhaviveka, his presentation of the existence of external objects is basically in accord with that of the Sautrantika school. However, that doesn't apply to the Master Chandrakirti. As it says here that, however, with respect to the Master Chandrakirti, although it is the case that he accepts the existence of external objects, the conventional existence of external objects, because he does it in a way which doesn't accord with other philosophers, it's inappropriate to call him a Sautrantika Madhyamika. That is, and then to finish this passage, and it's also incorrect to say that his position accords with that of the so-called lower school of Vaibhashika as well. In both the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika schools, they're positing the existence of external objects based upon some kind of fundamental, objective, really established objective base. Whereas in the position of the Master Chandrakirti, he doesn't accept that. He says that conventionally we say that there are external objects, but that's merely based upon a kind of process of designation and naming. We sort of, from our side, use the names of external objects, and we designate things as external objects through that kind of process of ascription of identity to them. But it's not the case that he says that there's some kind of objective, absolute ground or foundation for the supposed external objects.
Oh, yeah. And that she 도지저바 세참 미루나 치라마와다 tum바야 대바 미리소 사 천도 니오데 취대 샤수 주와 지바인 바래 니가 천도 취대 샤지시 태양 tum바 미리 다지나시 전에 참에 미제 로와 인장 렌덴디 누 참에 시기 와레디 누 참에 참에 임바 시기 와 말이 로와 누 참에양 가서도 두 참여양 아니 미견도 셰베스 두 참여 여장 두 참여 많이 봐. 그러와 지리 차지하세 어떻게 선거래. 두 참여세 다 미래 잡아들이다 이제라 미르서 시야.
참여
두 참여대 참여 말했어. 두 참여래. 두 참여래.
두 참여.
참여 말했어. 뭐 차차차 말했어.
So this gets into details of like what is the kind of absolute foundation of external objects, where we say that a gross external object is a composite of particles. Some schools of Buddhist philosophy say that those particles are partless and are without parts. However, Master Bhaviveka says you would say that these particles are how to say that? Chami min. that you'd say that you get down to a sort of irreducible particle of matter, but you wouldn't say that those are partless. They're simply as far as the particles of matter can be reduced.
지당 내가 가르쳐 오래서나 개와 가시기 참여시기 매와 인자 두 참여와 말했어. 두 참여시기 말했어. 나두 참여 메시지 와나 다때 라비처모 나라 렌len기 아니 두 참여 암비시 메시지 셔바 송바 연장 아니 대가금에 두 쓸까나 군전 제셔바 야세기 송당라잖아 장자당 주지 송다 제가나 디 참여디 참여시고 말했어. 암비시 메시지에 메시지에 참여시고 말했어. 차차 추시면 봐지. 왕시기 유도 딜에 차와기 차쳐주 매바기 암비시 유도 라 암비시 유도 딜에 차쳐주 매바기 안에 참여돼 라 오다 미젠도 시송 거래스 지단도 참여야 말이 미젠 시고 말이 제단 찍대체 라 지단 제단 찍라 도 참여 미젠 시바도 송와이데 도 참여 미젠 시기리 네 참여대 참여 말에 신앙교 취업 가르치나 차단 잡아고 그래 재단 이해하래.
So there's there are different interpretations of this, different ways of explaining this subtle point about the indivisibility of material particles, physical particles. That one way of interpreting Master Bhavaviveka's position on this, I mean, generally, Madhyamikas don't hold to things being partless. The idea of something that's indivisible, absolutely indivisible, is not acceptable. But as far as physical objects serving as the objective bases for sense perception, then you can talk about a sort of point of irreducibility of the matter, that sort of the smallest bits of matter that are able to serve as the object condition, the objective base for perception to take place. And you can say that for our when we have perceptions, sense perceptions, there has to be a sort of point at which you can't get smaller than a certain point, or else it's imperceptible. And at that point, you would say that the particles are without parts. They're not divided. But in general, you can't go beyond that and say that they're completely indivisible. Then there's another line of interpretation which just says that everything is divisible further and further, and la nipa di kotsuma sondi. Shitsu nipa. Tangbo di mikin.
미시기 암비시위 유도 아니 수 가서라 타라 딜레 타와 치지 매바인다. 그봐? 딜레 타와 암비시위 유도 아니 딜레 타와 치지 매바인장 참메시고 아레스. 그봐?
So that's enough. I mean that the when you
so
they would, one way of explaining this is that they don't accept indivisible or partless particles of matter, physical particles, but rather that you get to a point at which if you divide them further, they're imperceptible. You can't perceive them, and in that sense, you get to that point of irreducibility. You can't reduce them further and still have them operate as objects of perception.
Oh yeah, that. Pöji ane chidaraki kyawan namji ane that umawi tanyala ane umaranju badang. 안 탄주와세 그 타랑기 안에 채탄에 샤바데 태주데 가르주지 치달지 개와 남라 남 Umawala Tarang Niji Tanya Chabani, Tisata Tuno. Umawala Sega Tanju Tamji Jato, Java Jenga, Deva Chitang, Tanjuva. Yan Ranjuba, Segala Candice, Sana, Rangona to be sourcing with Dala Dana, and the Jato Java Java Dengachiki. And the Ranjuba Tanjuva needs that the peasant the middle thing Ra Kadu Treji, Chidaji Kawa Namla, Umawala Taran Niji Tanya Chabade, Tanjuwa, say with Tanya Cheva de Carresana, Tanju Tamji to be Java Java, Deba. Tanju Tamji. Ranjuba said the Carresana, and the Rangon should be sourced and be Dala Dana to be Java Java Deba in that Ranjuba. So, Tendigi, Tanya Cheva de Tisata Tumbare.
So then the text continues that says that here in this land of snows, the masters of the later diffusion, the later spread of the doctrine, they designated the two sub-schools of Madhyamika as the Prasangika Madhyamika and the Swatantrika Madhyamika. Prasangika means literally those who employ consequences or reduction to absurdity in proving their positions, and then those who employ autonomous proof statements are Swatantrika means autonomist school. Swatantrika are those who employ proof statements that are, or especially the evidence in the proof is held to have a sort of autonomous ability to bring about induce the inference that they're attempting to establish. So therefore, these sorts of two designations of Madhyamika as autonomous and consequentialist, or Swatantrika and Prasangika, that definitely accords with the explanation that one finds in the clear words, Prasanapada of the Master Chandrakirti. That differentiation of Madhyamika in that way. So therefore, it is definitely the case that we can subdivide Madhyamika masters and Madhyamika schools into those that conventionally accept or do not accept external objects, and then likewise in the way in which they, if we designate them from the point of view of how they generate the view, which gains sort of definitely ascertains emptiness within a person's mind, then the two ways of doing that are either using consequential arguments to negate wrong view as opposed to a positive proof statement. Then those two designations of Prasangika and Swatantrika are also appropriate.
Oh, that the Tenda de Songo, Tana Tanya to Chiro de Medinison Elas. Tanya to Chiro Yoba Danga, Ani Casore, Tanjuada, Dotijibu Maranjuba Nisha. Tanya to Chiro Meba Danga, Najujibu Maranjuba Nison Ela. Doning with Tawan Jula Jizu Gona Min Dona Yang, Tataju with it. Doning with Tawan Jula Jizu Gona Min Dona Yang, Samotombani, Ani Tanju Tamla Dana, Duchatovi, Japakiwa Dongante, Tanjuada. Tanju Zamji Juda Jem Minuba, Ani Ranju Denzi, Rangon to be Susan with Dang, Hour to Kenya, Duchatovi, Japakiwa Della, Ranjuba, Tanisunawares.
So that's, if we talk about, to unpack this a little bit, that in terms of those who accept conventionally external objects, then we would say that Master Master Bhaviveka and Master Chandrakirti Buddhapalita and so forth would fall into that category. those who conventionally accept external objects, then those who say that do not conventionally accept external objects. There's the Master Shantarakshita Kamalashila and so forth. And then if we subdivide the general body of Indian Madhyamika masters according to the way in which they hold that the view which ascertains emptiness arises or is generated, I should say, within the mind of a student, disciple, then we differentiate them as the prasangikas, who say that using these consequential reasonings, that by simply showing the absurd consequences of holding a position, they say that one is able to induce the understanding of the view of reality of emptiness, whereas the Swatantrika school says that you have to those kinds of reasonings which point out absurd consequences are insufficient. One has to augment them by employing positive reasoning, which is autonomous in nature. That is, it has from its own side an ability to generate the kind of inferential understanding of the view that one is after.
Oh yeah, that is la. Anakata bilama komata. Lobenta kangichesu tangre sena. Ani da kondoshebe lobenta kangichesu tangre sena kata bilama komata. Ana dawa jabe jesu tane. Ana dawa chokyo ba tembatela. Wana lobenta da suyu jesu tane papaga yapse ju komba cho nyamna. Ana lurudang papalan yapse niji komba cho nyamna. Cho chombo lobenta wa chabi lula. 아니 쪼르제비 제수 장에 아니 요 당아디 라마 코마 남지 담아디 라마 코마 첨부 나자 루디 쪼템바 이노 왔다 가르소래 저 첨부기 아니 나와 잡아 제수 주네 아니 쪼제비 제수 장에 아니 당아디야 라마 코마 첨부 남자 아니 나와 잡아 제수 장에 쪼제바래.
So then, if you wonder which of these various Madhyamika masters should one follow, it's the next section of the text says that the great masters of the Kadam tradition followed Chandrakirti when they were seeking the view. And this is the view, the position, the thought of the Lord Atisha, and so the next line of the text explains that, and it says, well, if you wonder, among these masters, which of these masters should one follow in order to seek the intention of the Arya Nagarjuna and Arya Deva, those two fundamental Madhyamika masters? Then the answer to that is that, well, the great Lord Atisha, he took the Master Chandrakirti's system as primary, as principal, and by following that, the great lamas, great gurus of this instruction, they as well held that system of Chandrakirti to be principal.
Oh yeah, cho chombo rangi ludu loma data yin tele jubi menga yu chen so anashin ludu loma dawa chaba tele jubi menga yu chen so ada ludu loma data yin tele jubi menga yu.
So this instruction then this stages of the path instruction is it's said that this instruction is taught following in terms of view, the position held by the Master Chandrakirti, who was the disciple of the Arya Nagarjuna.
Oh yeah, 다 듣는 다가 제서 장고와데 레셔님 분하라 다와 레원 레셔 요가지 로미 군데 차로 체위체 상제 gen지 장비 람도나 루루루산 조 미진수 전에 소하나시시 다와 차발레 원위 레셔주 요가지 요가 다와기 아니 여샤발라 때네 로데단 덴바기 미키 로미 군데 군다 배마기 차 체위체 아니 산제 장지 템베 람토네 산제 템베 루루주 공바 치신도 저와 부다 빨리나서 땡라 파바기 아니 어디 가서래 사모타만지 텐터 아니 통배 인자다 루루굴 산주 미조 미진까지 수시요가데 내가 증거 그래 전에 소환하시 전에 다 다자기 쓰는
So this is also, J. Rinpoche explained this in his great work, The Essence of Good Explanations, in which he said that that he used the simile of like his mind being like a night blooming flower, like a lotus that blooms at night, and said that the light rays from the moon opened up the lotus, the night blooming lotus of my mind, and that example there is the moon there is using the word Chandra. Chandra means moon, so Chandra Kirti, what he explained is that Chandra Kirti's explanation enabled him to see correctly that Buddhapalita's explanation of Nagarjuna was the correct one, and that this enabled him to develop the correct understanding of the nature of reality, of understanding emptiness. And so then he says that I have the utmost respect for the system of Chandra Kirti.
Oh, that did it. 제랑게 산제장단 다와차비 루니 조탕 티제수 렌렌체이지 아니 가치와 시주 티제수 렌렌체 가치와 시주니 나 로변 다외니 자시지 제세 남긴 나네 다 초도지와 산제장지 부다 발리다 산제장지 파별 공부 자와 시네 루디 시쇼 자신 시리 자신 렌렌체지양 레샤 망보 랑라 다 렌렌체기 랑잔 탄네도 랑잔 샤지 샤와라 소와 아니 미데바 나와남 시추네 아니 파별 공부 제로
Jelos.
So
then, the master Chandra Kirti, Master Chandra, it says here, he saw that within the various commentaries that explain the fundamental wisdom of the Middle Way, the basic text taught by Master Arya Nagarjuna, he saw that the Master Buddhapalita had completely explained the intention of Arya Nagarjuna, and so Master Chandrakirti took Buddhapalita's explanation as a foundation, and he also, however, took many of the good explanations which the Master Bhaviveka had taught, and there's some things that Master Bhaviveka expressed, such as holding that things are established by intrinsic identity conventionally, that Master Chandrakirti held to be unacceptable. So he refuted those things that appeared to be incorrect, and in that way explained the thought of Arya Nagarjuna.
Oh yeah, that 뒤 탐제도 다 뒤규엄 뒤 탐제도 다 되는 숨지 아니 공부 타도 사무동반이 sabten 샤발라 나 로변 단다지 산제 장당 안에 다와 차바니 같이 주대 네 송이 살이 와 로변 뒤니지 대와니 대와 남니 안에 다 로변 파발라 당 파바그 주디당 안에 루루기 르조당 라소가 아니 대다기 흉차발라 체푸도 총아 통연나 니니 로변 산제 장당 다와샤 지제수 장네 아니 파바 예세지 공바 아니 사모된 중고 태권한 이때나 파비 예수 파보
So therefore these two commentaries or the explanations contained in the commentaries of these two masters, that is Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti, are I see these as being the most excellent among all of the explanations of the texts, systematic texts of the Master Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, his father and son. And therefore, here in this teaching here, I will establish the teaching. I will establish the thought of the father and son, Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, the founders, by following the masters Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti, the venerable Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti.
Oh yeah, 진짜 인상 진짜 장고라마 정과 전부 또 토만 예빈 내가 라야. 아니 흉들에 되는 예봐. 공단 전배양 그 소원 나신 선님. 아니 시태당 주좀 사실라. 살라미 지라 최진바. 주다와 제비 사변답. 진소사 주장 출리제. 남코베 자당 dum사나. 내타도 따위로도 민인세션이 소원 나신 선님. 다와 공대사바 규조한테 참고하래 사나 아니 시타진 공도 예바 나신 전에 테네 추당 다시 주와나세 가나 어때네 공발하는 건도 저를 시 수준 남바 타바지 고고 말해 그러와 아니 장고라마 정과 전부를 주진 장기 아니 가서 샬라 초소 드바종 사단라마 예매도 전에 소와데 예레미는 저 군대도 체 전에 담반하시 전에 아니 사단라마 예매도 전에 소왔다 봐 지체 근데 돈이 뭐서 돈이 또 봐기 잡아대 아니 주다와 제비 사변 답 아니 파발루루 여사기 흉대다라 마 잡아 체네 미련 그 주들 다와 제바 사바다 제 소사 주장 다와 잡아 진짜 초사바 다다지 얘기 상동 그 초디죠 어요 진소사당 다와도바 가진 파제 정해 출리 람 코사를 들어가게 안에 자당 놈대서 네타도 또 나대와 로도 미전이 소환하신 전이 아니야 대대받기다.
So this is the way this all comes together is as J. Rinpoche has said elsewhere. He said that if one is seeking the view, the way I sought the view is the way that others should seek the view as well. And the way in which one does that is by, it's exactly analogous to growing a crop. The crop is the ultimate outcome of the process. It's what you're after in the entire process here. You're trying to produce the fruit or the result of the crop. And in order to do that, you have to have all of the conditions, the field, the seeds, the warmth and moisture, all of the effort, all of the different conditions, basic causes and cooperative conditions that give rise to the crop. Similar to that, or exactly analogous to that, if one wants to give rise to the view, then you have to assemble all of the conditions, have the basic, the foundation here is similar, is proper ethical conduct. If you don't have proper ethical conduct, then there's no way to give rise to the view properly. And all of the conditions that were mentioned earlier in the session this morning, earlier session this afternoon, I'm sorry, this morning, where you have to have, you have to study, analyze, meditate, and so forth, rely upon a spiritual master who is competent to teach the subject and so forth. And then Je Rinpoche himself, he said that in the beginning I practiced pure morality, then I engaged in extensive study, and I prayed to my guru as inseparable from my deity, Manjushri, and then in the course of studying in that way and practicing in that way, developing a vast accumulation of positive karma, merit, as well as purification of all of the negativities, wrong actions, and all of the negative karma that one has done, purifying those. All of that comes together to eventually culminate in the view arising within a person's mind.
La Sawaki, and Lobe Chanju La Sawa, Sawanga, and some attention Kitamji, and Drolin Zeba. Tinana, and Pande, Sanjay Jangi, and Gabeki Chill, Putapalita, and Kala, Udo the Shani, Chijilavaki, and Nalam Chundukala, and Sani, the Devapatupala City County, and Shini Tower Trumbagi, or Tawat. So then
when Je Rinpoche, Je Tsongkhapa was doing this, he studied all of the extensive Madhyamika treatises of starting, with Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Buddhapalita, Bhaviveka, all of them, the Madhyamika masters mentioned earlier. He performed all of these extensive kinds of practices of purification and accumulation of merit. He prayed to his chosen deity to inspire him to, and to all of the the gurus who had taught this teaching in the past, to bestow upon him the correct understanding of this. And then it is said in his biography that, and he recounted that in one night in his dream, he saw he had a volume of Buddhapalita opened to the 6th chapter of the Liu Drukpa, the Sankikyangi. The commentary composed by the master Buddhapalita was opened, and at that time, in this dream, Manjushri showed to him how to understand this text, and that sort of was the source of his coming to a final determination of the actual view.
Oh yeah, that did. Sandong is so down, Jiltamba said that the Angela Chimache. That Chaba the Tower Dana Bizu said that. You were Chaba the Tower Dana Bizu Tela. That Tower Dana Baba, that you come to Shubanashi, Kubatam Jetawa, and the Maribang or Songa. Or the tender in Maribadi, and you call it Zawa in Batamba. Dancing the bond, Derbe, and Dame Betawa Zawa watch, and such a sumche.
So that summarizes the first section of the text where it talks about relying upon the various prerequisites or equipment for obtaining the view, and then that brings us to the second subdivision of the text here, which how this basic second subdivision is, in particular, how the view is, the way to establish the view in particular. And that itself has three subdivisions. First of these is identifying the ignorance, which is a mental affliction. As I mentioned earlier, the root of samsara, and the source or the root of all difficulties, all problems, all suffering is ignorance. And this is, first section is identifying that particular type of ignorance. And then the second subdivision here is showing that is actually the root of cycling in samsara, wandering in samsara. And then third subdivision here is that someone who desires to get rid of that kind of grasping at a self, misconception of a self, should seek the view of selflessness.
Oh yeah, 다 당부되라. 차소를 비 미디쇼 지 인장 조 명바 해야 돼. 지단 비 미디쇼 해야 돼.日巴되라. 아니다 단디라잖아. 돈이도 비시상. 대 간다 미디쇼 좋아서 대당 간다 미디쇼 좋아지단 미디쇼 잠전 이샤제. 그럼 미디쇼 지장 차소되다. 아니日巴一些돈이도 비시 그 미디쇼래. 做门把塞的做生意的扩大干的，是吧？让心情，把你没法多比落地给我干的，让心情主要这边怎么去过的？我电影天马一把一张掐说的的，掐说没得去错，几张没，日本没得错的，他什么就年纪没被吃这个了，马里巴拉等的说完，日本没得错，现在日本的他家咱们这话来的。 让个大们多比写了下呢，是吧？台长刚才的做的钱，刚才没人讲提给没对说咱们下一个呢，等到的送给一些大家查说日本没对说这个演讲做明白，在的刚才没对说的没明白，明白的看的人也是那，但等到的，这位查说，今天的这查说你们现金你不送吧，那么确认你不的，本来对家一年不没对吧光巴的。 세상 그 님보요 아니 잡아 공부하라 써와 숨바대다 말이 보이는 뭐 아니 믿어 봐 공부하라 써와 손해야 되죠 뭐 말에 대자 그냥 뭐 믿어 봐 공부하라 써와 아니 말이 보이는 뭐 감다라고 공부하라 써와 제가 송하지 요아래데 대다 아니 가설에 님모신 님모 숨바니 초래 와래 님보래 님모 탐자 그 님보 숨바 말에 세가라 야외 차소님은 현지 년보 선반에 초르위 년보 어디 미두보 공바 대자 그 년보 참바 공바 세상 그 년보 감지라위 라서 봐 보면 아 마리비 년보 어디 스탠데 전에 초르위 년보 일라 다 말을 봐서 된다 이 말을 봐대 당장 말을 봐 르바이 시지 간다 미두 초위 년보 선반에 타다 그 년보 초르웨 타다 그 년보 초르웨 말을 봐대
So here, the first subdivision here, that is identifying the ignorance, which is the mental affliction, the type of ignorance which is a mental affliction. Here it says that, so as a sort of background to this, attachment, etc., are
차소님은 현지년보 소반에 초래년보래 차소님은 현지년보 소반에 가르를 했으나 참바 공부도 대자 그년보 믿어봐 공부 대자 그년보 참바 공부하고 세당 그냥 뭐 저봐 어딘데 니뭐 초려 그냥 뭐 숨are 나 말이 그냥 뭐 숨와대 안에 타다기 니뭐 타다 그냥 뭐 주와래 세와 이 인장 말이 받은 예전 탐재기 말이 받 그냥 뭐 손대 가라 말이 받잖아 예전 탐재 좀 고구와 인장 아니 말이 받는 예전 탐재지 시인데 말을 녀보서 말에 타다 그 녀보 주로 인상 말을 봐 여제 탐제 그 싸움 시대래.
So here it says that attachment and so forth. So here like attraction, aversion, desire, hatred, all of these different kinds of mental afflictions, those are actually not in they're contrary to knowledge. The term knowledge here is referring specifically to the wisdom that is referring specifically to the wisdom that understands emptiness. So desire, hatred, attachment, aversion, all of these different types of mental afflictions are contrary to, or not in they're contrary to knowledge. However, they're not primary because they're only sort of partial. And then the text here explains in more detail that the victor, that's the Buddha, said that whereas when he taught the different sorts of things as antidotes to the other mental afflictions. That's referring to here where if you're under the control of attachment or desire, one should meditate on or think about impermanence. Impermanence functions as an antidote to attachment, to desire. Similarly, contemplating or thinking about developing love is the antidote to hatred, aversion, and so forth. So those sorts of antidotes function to counteract the other mental afflictions, but they're classified as being only a partial type of antidote. The antidote to ignorance, here, this specific kind of ignorance, which is mentioned here, is taught as being an antidote for all of them. And the reason for that is that ignorance is the basis for all of the different kinds of faults and defects. So what's being explained here is that the antidote for ignorance, that is, if you meditate on love and compassion, love and impermanence and so forth, or if you meditate or think about the different categories of things that exist, if you analyze the different types of existence, those actually serve as antidotes to desire, to hatred, and then the last of these, thinking about the different categories of existence, functions as an antidote to some kinds of ignorance, but none of those will function as the antidote to all of the above. None of those sorts of antidotes will eliminate the other categories of mental afflictions, whereas the specific ignorance which is being taught here is functions as an antidote for all of the different kinds of mental afflictions, because, and the reason for that is that the ignorance, which is the contradictory, the opposite of knowledge here, is itself the basis for all of the different kinds of faults and defects.
Oh yeah, that 되게 준전되라. 나와 잡이 세상에 가서 산재 남지 도이 돼서 덴바니 된 남바고 산재 남지 안는 도대 그 내가서 산재지 승부 도대 남지 안는 도대 남서 안는 군조당 전 담비 덴바라 덴바 안는 여도적 세지가 전발라 덴바 남바고 어디 직된 남지 정을 자체 가시 되니 양다 자주 받지 직된 반 남제 라랑기 아니 뭐로 아니 대자게 냠보 미두 바꿔 바당 세상 그 냠보 참바 공부라 소와게 아니 자체 가시 되니 양다 자주 봐 대니 아니 미두 바꿔 바데 대자 사지 숭바레 마도 대수 대자 그 냠보 미두 바꿔 발라 때네 대자 아니 가서 운주와 가그를 말대 세상 가투고 말해 세상 사바 챙고 말해 야 세상 사위 치도 세상 그냥 뭐 참박관바 송화대 간도 참박관바라 때는 내가 세상 운주와 가바자 마도 되게 아니 되자 사바 챙고 말해 사바 치고 말해 그러와 가싱아자 소세 차질 숨바 대장 정말 셈 미좀 오당 아자 아니 가서를 아자 그냥 뭐 와숨바 대게 아니 가서 감지라 왜라서와 당 아자 그냥 뭐 숨바 대자 사 숨바 대자장 아자 남이 아니 가서를 내가 아자 온주와 좀 받자 마도 정말 시간 좀 주고 말해 뭐 인상 텐드 년보다 체자 말했어 방자 초럽이 년보 좀 레디 방자 탐자 탐제 봉제 그냥 뭐 탐제 봉제 그냥 뭐 잡아들 말해서 되니 대지 되니 체자 많이 순대 타당 대장 정말 샘매중 소 순대다기 아니 지라랑 그 아니 대마도 정말 샘줘 두고 말해 가서 대지 대다 체자 많이 순대 타당 전세 많이 전신부 라랑 그 아니 내가 그 정말 온주가 좀 받으면 대마도 가서 전체미 다 때문에 세지 숨바 세대 때문에 당신 말해봐 때문에 세지 숨바 강인 되니 니모 말이 좀좀 때문에 세지 숨바 강인 되니 니모 말이 좀 라 가서래 대좀바 준전 가르래 사람 니모 다다 때문에 날래 땜바 겨와 남지 양다 송 얘다 니그 탐제지 싸와대 아니 때문에 말이 말라 때나 중화대 아니 개와 숨바래 싸와 아니 당신 말이 봐 좀배 싸와 제나 아니 야가들로만 도바 나신 체네 오다 용배 싸와 당신 말이 봐 방도 잠바 아니 티 내때나 중에 차다 모서 강가 좀 봐 인상 다 말이 뭐냐 무서 봐대 아니 찾아버려 참아 님부 탐치 쳐봐
So then the reason for this, showing how the antidote to ignorance functions as an antidote to all of the other mental afflictions, because this ignorance is sort of the foundation for all of the mental afflictions. This is explained in some verses that are cited out of the clear words of the Master Chandrakirti. And the text here says that the Buddhas taught all of the sutras, etc., based upon the two realities. And there are 9 types of teachings that they gave in dependence upon the two realities in the sutras. And all of those vast teachings, vast practices for beings, here I praise them all. I rightly praise them all. Here, the things that are taught to remove attachment, they don't eliminate anger. The ones that are taught in order to dispel anger are not able to eliminate desire and attachment. Those, so here the examples given are that if you are under the control of attachment, one should contemplate the unattractive nature, the actual unattractiveness of the object that you're attached to or desire. And then the same thing applies with anger. If you, the antidote to anger being love, seeing the object as suitable to have love towards. Then the teachings that are given to eliminate pride and so forth, here the example that's given for the kinds of things to contemplate when one's under the control of pride is the different elements and parts that make up oneself, the different components of oneself. By thinking about those, one can diminish one's pride. Those teachings which are given to eliminate, eradicate pride and so forth, they don't eliminate, they're not able to destroy other kinds of stains or defilements. Therefore, they don't have, they're not all pervasive. They don't cover all of the other kinds of mental afflictions, and they don't accomplish the great objective of they don't have the great purpose of eliminating all of those sorts of mental afflictions. However, that which is taught in order to eliminate confusion, here the confusion is being used as a synonym for the ignorance which grasps at a self, which misunderstands the nature of the self. The teachings that are given in order to eliminate that is able to destroy all of the different mental afflictions. And the reason for that is that the Buddhas have taught that all mental afflictions are founded on this kind of confusion.
Oh yeah, that is it. What is that? Kasore, imota timulani temba, Jawanam Jisung, say Canada, Newa Tamje, Zawade, and Kasore, Danze Maripala Tuba Yembe, that Danze Marimba Kovi Zawa, de Tuba in the Danze Mariba, so in the Goa in the 他就看到些把那里，你跟他一早晚的太阳就说大了穷，是那么这个大了送下他。但是对比那了，今天鬼把钱也把他一早晚买了的，鬼把他们这个早晚的，俺这看着是买了把的，今天鬼把钱也把他一早晚买了的，他听买了把多把钱把那看着个个人是那，俺这康熙团外太多把，但是这话就话送是。 多把点这个天到呢，天空把了点呢，马里把多把哥哥一张，但马里比你把点把切把了，他妈马里把我也送过来的，是吧？我，安尼，刚才马里把我也马上把了，安尼的，马里把给钱用把点了旁边个美女把一张，但他第二天送的话，太大那马里比你把太宽那也管不过啦，是我太那。 我马里边人不太困难，有公公啦是哦。今天过把这年今夜把天早晚没人的，康熙团员太多吧是一干了，安尼，还是康熙团员太多吧是呢？安尼康去康熙的团员，安尼马里把多把这个人噻，安尼马里边人个当用我是特别老公公的，是太困难有公公啦是。我当年个。 光把钱把啦，俺那马里边人不光把钱把啦，俺那马里帮我也马生呐，俺那天人帮我也没生把，他马里帮我也是把他心都卡起来的，是我印象，大别我那马里把天人我没怎么赢，是干啦，俺那大家家马里把个现有我也马生把啦，俺那个现有个当把的著名的把印象，他妈马里帮我也是把他卡起来把的，
It is Mond.
啊，看见是
啊，
你怎么看的？你跟他这样就打了之前，今天鬼把钱也把他一早晚买的，康熙团员太多吧是。
康熙团员太多。
哦，有康熙的团员买的把多个人是那，哎，康熙团员等进这话就没了。
So Jerome Che said that all of and many other masters, sutras, etc., the treatises of Nagarjuna, it appears everywhere that the root of all problems, of all suffering, all of the disasters that befall sentient beings, all of these things, the root or foundation of them is this ignorance which grasps at a self, misconceives the self. And that is in order to eliminate that, since if one wants to avoid the all of the different types of suffering, one has to remove and eliminate the source of that. One must first identify what that type of ignorance is. This ignorance here is not just any kind of ignorance, but it's a specific sort of ignorance that grasps at the self as existing in a way in which it doesn't actually exist. Therefore, it says in the text here, in order to, one has to meditate on reality as the antidote to ignorance. If you don't identify what ignorance is, one won't know how to meditate or to cultivate, develop the antidote towards that, and therefore the identification of the ignorance itself is extremely important. So here, ignorance is not just ignorance in general, but it refers specifically to a mind or a sort of cognition or thought mind, which is holding its object to exist in a way that it does not exist. So it takes its sort of a conceived object, the self, as if is existing as by means of its own intrinsic being or intrinsic nature, and that is the ignorance here that's being discussed. Whereas the wisdom which understands emptiness correctly is the direct contrary of that, and when one gives rise to that, it serves as a direct opponent or antidote to that fundamental misconception of the nature of the self.
Mariba ripi midi cho cham joja taji shiyimba midi cho cham jojang diri deme to ripi midi cho stachida mariba jodan dela ani tezu minda yoare rawa mariba se kana mon cham la mariba che ranyu la mon ba number ju bi semjung se kana mon cham la mariba cho ya chi mariba dang jigda ni wo de so cheke mariba la jigda mayung gwe 야 마리바 가라 몽자나 마리바 잡아 마임바 아니 단다 전주와당 다단다디 가소래 리비젠랑 셈삼바 리비젠랑 셈삼자 아니 참 전화 쳐다 리비젠랑 셈삼 로스리가나 다주시와 나시체니 리비 미디 초지자 셈중이지 미비체르세 리바이시지 아니 대가래서서나 대체 리바이시데라 다음에 또 별로체 되게 미디쇼 아니 미디쇼 간다 미디쇼서 주의 아니 당진 요 대체가 당진 두체가 뭔자나 말이 봐셔와지 리바이가 이시지 간다 미디쇼서 주의 아니 심중라 말이 봐생가지 요 되게나 아니 말이 받아 직단이 오데 가와 매봐 직단은 말이 봐임에 파고 잡고 거래 직단은 말이 봐임에 잡 와 직단아 말이 봐임 거 그래 가야잖아 직단이 아니 리바이시 간다 미디쇼지 주의 심중을 거와 직단이 리바이시 다음에 또 배셔라와 근데 이다게 안에 다도 주와 증거와 간다 미디쇼고 저거와 얘다 땀 하나 말이 받달라 몽자나 말이 받셔봤지 리바 이시치도 주에 간다 미디 초스 리바 임발라 semju yimbala mariba shingachi chiche riba chanangi semsaba ta tanju wilula ane riba ishi kanda midi chosu juwe riba chila ta mariba sika riba ishi kanda midi chosu juwe
Rikpa Yishi.
예, 누가? 델레두스 누가? 텔라 마리바니 리비 도저 인라. 리바 가르레 사나 담에 도벨로 리비 도저 인라. 리바야 칸야 룸알라 지금 말해서 리바야 칸야 메체라 메체테 담에 도비 태권나니 도비 셰라오 스테두가 더우도.
텔르베 레.
나 그대로 마리바세에 리비 도저레. 다 리바데 칸야 리바이 도저 인라 리바데야 칸야 룸알라 지금 말해서 담에 도비 아니 태권나니 리비 셰라보스 티 도저 강에서 다음에 봐도 비 셰럽데 다음에 봐도 말이 발때가 다도 추었지 바인자 어디 도저래 와 도저 디 도저 셰럽보스 대라 도저니 도저디 셰럽데 매바잖아 지금 말해 셰럽데 많이 받잖아 지금 말해 셰럽디 간다 미디 추어지고 아래 아 티 간다고 도시죠 거의 치지 말고 로 티기 아니 간다 치지로
치지로. So then the question of what arises as to what is ignorance here. In general, one can say that one posits that generally ignorance is merely that something which is not in accord with knowledge. The Tibetan and Sanskrit here, marikpa and avidya and vidya, it's clear in the languages here that the words themselves, ignorance and knowledge, are basically ignorance is not knowing. So one can say that ignorance, that in general, ignorance is simply the something which is not in accord with knowledge. However, here it's being used in a specific sense, or a narrower sense, referring to something which is actually not contrary to, not in accordance with the knowledge which understands absence of self. So ignorance is being used in that specific sense here, not as ignorance in general. And then the text continues here, with regard to that, ignorance is in general the opposite of knowledge. However, we're not talking about knowledge of any sort whatsoever. Rather, we're referring to the wisdom which knows reality, the reality which is selflessness. So the contrary of that, or the opposite of that, is not it's not simply the absence of that kind of wisdom, that kind of knowledge, and it's not simply something which is other than that kind of knowledge or wisdom. Rather, it's the case that it's the actual opposite of that. So here, ignorance holds the self as existing by means of its own intrinsic nature. It's grasping at the self as being real, and that ignorance, the knowledge here is not simply knowledge in general, but rather is referring specifically to the knowledge that understands correctly, that it's the kind of wisdom which understands that there is no such self, self which exists by means of its own intrinsic nature, intrinsic being, and it's not real as it appears.
Oh yeah, there's some. Oh, 가서래. 뒤도저 내셔라데 매바 잠당 텔레 샴바잖아 미루베 다 뒤가 간다지고 그래서 봐. 다 뒤제라. 다 된다이 말이 바데 간데레사나 오 간데지레사나 다 딜라 당전 참모 니 모스 샤바니 송구도 다 니모스 샤바세야 돼 마르바 샤바니 송아 인지리 와 단지 참모니 니모스 저 니모스나 바제 섬중고고아래 다 마르바 샤바 단지 참모니 니모스 샤바니 많이 마르바니 와라죠 되니 나도 저도 봐 인라 단지 참모니 세가라 가사게 다도 선바당 최지 다도 선바 이체是吧？他听你马日巴下巴，是马日巴下巴，你莫是下巴你。我听你，俺那大多找多把赢啦，大多找多把看着人山大，大多出钱，那让我那出把，让信息出把，让信息出把找多把赢啦。现在给找多呀，太那样，看了找多少给洗的啦。아니 가사당 가사래先把그权益也把인배 대라양 최다 가사 그다 아니 동 가사에 매우 가사다权益也把인장 아니 나도 저도 봐 대라양 아니 매우 풍부한 면에 나도 저도 봐기 아니 다 최지당제 지당 매우 가사래 면에 아니 가사 그다 라시 주와 진바기 아니 가사 그다 니가 요와데 테니가 말을 바래 야
So here then this ignorance, which is the ignorance which is being discussed here, which is the opposite of wisdom, and wisdom is the opposite, contrary of it. Is here it is referred. The ignorance here is that which superimposes or exaggerates, superimposes upon the self a nature which it doesn't possess, or which exaggerates the status of the self as existing in a way in which it doesn't actually exist. And so here the term self is referring to some kind of intrinsic nature, and the ignorance is the it's a type of mental affliction. Therefore, it's a sort of mental factor, a sort of component within the operation of the mind that engages in this sort of superimposition or exaggeration of the existential status of the self. So that has two types as well. There's the ignorance which superimposes a self of phenomena, and is a ignorance which superimposes or exaggerates a self of persons. The ignorance, the basic functioning of it is the same, but it's divided into these two types in accordance with the object that it takes. So when this ignorance, a mind which is under the control of this ignorance, takes as its object phenomena such as the aggregates that make up, like the body, or the different parts of the sensation and so forth, which make up the person, and external objects and so forth, then it's called the ignorance which exaggerates a self of phenomena. When it takes the person as its object, then it is designated as the ignorance which superimposes or exaggerates a self of persons. So it has these two types, and therefore derived from those two types of superimposition or exaggeration, we also distinguish the grasping at a self of phenomena and a grasping at a self of persons, that's what this ignorance is. And both of those are categorized as ignorance here.
Oh yeah, that is this one. 최지 단체다 가사가 단체 이가 말을 바래 세. 다 말을 바디 랑신 말을 바인자다 가르 줘도 그와래 세나 말을 바티 아니 랑신 강 줘도 수 가르래 세나 that tin to carry sana chunam las right ani khasa dang ani phungso ji chunam la rang ngoye sam rangxin ji sam rang chen sam rangxin ji ba zhen ba rang ngoye chu ba是吧rang ngoye chu ba rang ngoye sam rang ngoye chu ba rang chen ji chu ba rangxin ji chu ba 다 랑공의 주바당 랑그 천이지 주바당 랑신지 주바세디 간제 간데시고레세나 다 타냐 다비 다든 자위 천나 예바 강사 시가라 타냐 다비 시디 강돈도 다와 티잖아 아니 다시 풍비도 다 다위 되나 다시 풍보 레레비 된도야 많이 풍보 초비 된도야 많이 아니 어다 강도 따나야 많이 봐 인장 다든 자위 찬나 미에 봐대是吧 也봐대 랑원에 주바체 랑신지 주바체 많이 봐대 랑원에 마 주바체 이와 인장 가사기 천시라 다 오라마 동거리마 가사기 천시라 삼삼바기 꾸시대 도대와당 아니 가서를 제라마가 가시기 풍봉가 풍봉 가사가 던게 아니 다 너지 비오마랑 너지 가서 아 우마랑주 바데기 아니 가서 리비잖아 그 산담보다 우마랑주 바데게 남시 가사도 되게 산신 남시 가사도 돼. 다 전속이 랑원에 주바다 라신이 주바다라는 천이 주바 되고 말해. 내가 가르래서나 가사시 타냐 따위 따뜻 자위 채나 아니 풍봉아 가는 게 가사 따사 그 시대 가는 가사 가는 도 나나 안에 다시 풍비도 자와 티세나 선전바기 구시 남시 가사 그 가사도 예바 여바예자 가사랑은에 주바케래 오마랑주 바단 도저 왔든지 얘니까라 풍비 니기 남시 천시기 남시 그 띵도 안에 가사 짜주 잠바 다시 풍비도 자와 티잖아 남시 가사도 예바 되고 예자 가사랑은에 주대 是吧？现在让人家出吧，是吧？我让人家出呢，他原来他都出吧的，他路的啦，大些碰不定都早晚天在那，大些碰不定都完了，碰不操巴当，碰不热哇的，碰不操巴当，看这个大就咱把看他早晚呢，你就没把人张，你呢，你把他你把就把人张，人张。 大段在于才能满也把一张，然后呢马住，让心情马住，让个产业去马住，是吧？
So then, if we ask how that ignorance operates and what it superimposes upon things, whether you're talking about persons or other phenomena, the text here says. That the way in which that superimposes or exaggerates the existential status of things, that ignorance operates, it holds phenomena as existing such that they are established by means of their own character or their own identity, or by means of their own existence, intrinsic existence. So that's the process, the fashion or way in which that ignorance superimposes upon things a sort of existence that they don't possess, or exaggerates their actual existence as being in a certain way. So the different schools of Buddhist philosophy here have different interpretations of what it is that ignorance is and what it's doing. In this particular system, it has to do with, in particular, the Prasangika system that we're covering here. Its key position is that when you examine a designated object and you seek sort of the basis of the you seek the designated object designated phenomenon within its basis of designation, it's not findable. You don't arrive at anything. To illustrate this, if we look at what the other Buddhist schools of philosophy are doing, they would say that, for example, if you take a person as an example, all Buddhists agree that the person is designated has as its basis of designation, or its basis of its identity, the aggregates, either one of the 5 aggregates that make up the person, or the collection of the 5 aggregates as a whole, are the basis of designating a person, or the basis of the identity of for the identification of the person. The other schools of philosophy, if we take the Yogacara school, they would say that if you look within the 5 aggregates for a findable basis of the person, then you finally arrive at what they call the basal consciousness, or the consciousness which is the foundation of all other things, all other forms of consciousness, basal consciousness, and that they identify as sort of the final foundation for the identification of a person. The schools of other Yogacara masters that differ on that position, such as the master Dignaga Chandrakirti, they say that they don't agree in accepting that kind of basal consciousness as sort of the fundamental basis for identifying the person. Rather, they say that it's the mental awareness or mental consciousness. The stream of that is sort of the basis for identifying a person, or giving it that identity. However, in this, and that's also the position that's held by the Master Bhaviveka as well. However, in this system, this tradition of the Prasangikas, they say that if something was findable when it's sought, if the person was found when sought within its basis of designation, then it would entail all sorts of inconsistencies and incoherent problems, and therefore they say that you can't, when you search the basis of you search for the designated thing within its basis of designation, that it's not found. When you look for the person within its basis of designation, the 5 aggregates, either individually or collectively, so the person is not found within that basis of designation. Therefore, it's the case that the person is identified simply by the identity of it is ascribed to, achieved based upon the basis, its basis of designation, the collection of the aggregates in this case. And so we can say that a person is designated based upon their basis of designation, but you wouldn't say that the person is findable within the basis of designation. If it was findable, then it would exist from its own side. That is, the person would have some kind of existence in on its own character, or by means of its, it would be established by means of its own intrinsic identity, or by means of its own intrinsic being. And that all of those are basically synonymous for different ways of the person or self-being that are incoherent and that are unworkable.
Oh yeah, that the Rodotuni, the Tessison, 다 되니 마체 가나다 오나 라왕 그 죽고 매나 아나 간데 죽으래서는 아나 또배 따sam지 임바디 샤고와리 니 천나 또배 따바sam지 조주 시나 텔레도도 진비 딘딘데라도 샤와 교회 소아나시 전에 다 또배 따자 임바디 마샤고와리 되마
So therefore, see, what's being said here is that that phenomena, things, don't exist from their own side. Rather, they're merely designated conceptually. That is, thought conceives them, and that's all they exist. That's the totality of their existence. They merely exist as they're conceived or designated by thought. They don't exist from their own side, objectively or independently. And that'll all come as the explanation of this will all come as we go along. That's just introducing it here. So we'll stop here.
이당 구르라나 멘라라 관이야 다야미 다기 진이 사회 개와 대단한 조와 빌라